When my friend Josh and I moved into our apartment, we were excited about the freedom of having our own place. It was a bit pricey, but we figured we could handle it together. After a few months, though, the bills started to pile up, and we decided it was time to find a third roommate to help with the rent. Josh mentioned that he had reconnected with an old childhood friend named Adam, who was looking for a place to stay. I didn't know Adam, but Josh assured me he was a great guy, so we agreed to let him move in. Adam seemed normal enough when he first arrived. He was quiet, kept to himself, and didn't cause any trouble. But there was something about him that made me uneasy. Maybe it was the way he rarely made eye contact, or how he seemed to avoid conversation, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Not long after Adam moved in, Josh went on a week-long vacation, leaving me alone with our new roommate. I wasn't too worried at first. I figured we'd just coexist until Josh got back. But that first night, something strange happened. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when I heard a faint noise coming from Adam's room. It sounded like moaning, almost as if he was having a nightmare. I thought about checking on him, but decided against it, figuring it was none of my business. The next night, the noise came again, only this time it was louder and more frantic. It wasn't just moaning, it was a mix of moaning and gibberish, like someone trying to speak in a language they didn't know. I lay there, wide-eyed and anxious, trying to ignore it. Then one night, things escalated. I woke up to the sound of loud banging, followed by frantic screams. My heart leaped into my throat as I realized the noise was coming from Adam's room. The banging continued, growing louder and more erratic, as if he was trying to break something, or someone inside his room. Panic set in as I listened to the sounds of chaos coming from the other side of the wall. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police, but I froze when I heard Adam's door creak open. The scream stopped and there was only silence. I held my breath, praying that he wouldn't come into my room. But then I heard footsteps approaching my door. They were heavy, deliberate, as if someone was dragging their feet. I scrambled out of bed and locked my door, just as the knocking started. It was loud and relentless, shaking the door on its hinges. "Let me in." Adam's voice was a mix of anger and desperation. "Let me in now." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My heart was pounding in my chest as I pressed myself against the wall, hoping the door would hold. The knocking continued, turning into pounding, as Adam screamed and ranted on the other side. I could hear him throwing his weight against the door, trying to break it down. I dialed 911, my hands shaking as I tried to explain what was happening. The operator assured me that help was on the way, but it felt like an eternity before I heard the sirens outside. When the police arrived, the knocking stopped. They found Adam's room empty, with no sign of him anywhere. The apartment was trashed, furniture overturned, walls scratched and marked with what looked like claw marks. But there was no sign of Adam. The police took my statement and assured me they'd find him, but I didn't feel safe staying in that apartment. The next day, I packed my things and left. A few weeks later, I got a call from Josh, who was back from vacation. He told me that Adam was found in a nearby psychiatric hospital. Apparently, he had a history of severe mental illness and had escaped from the facility before moving in with us. I haven't spoken to Josh since, and I've been living alone ever since. The memory of that night still haunts me, especially when I hear knocking late at night. I can't help but wonder what would have happened if I hadn't locked that door in time. College was supposed to be a fresh start for me, a chance to leave behind the boredom of high school and start over. I was assigned a dorm room with a guy named Liam. He seemed nice enough when we first met, a bit quiet, but I thought we'd get along fine. For the first few weeks, everything was normal. We went to classes, hung out with other students, and got used to living in the dorm. But then, one night, something weird happened. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps, soft, quick footsteps. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but as I lay there, listening in the dark, I realized it was real. The footsteps were coming from inside our room. I opened my eyes and looked around, trying to figure out what was going on. The room was dimly lit by the moonlight coming in through the window, and I could see Liam moving around. But he wasn't just moving. He was running. He was running silently in circles around the room. I watched, confused and a little freaked out, as Liam kept running past my bed, then around the room again. His footsteps were quick and light, like he was trying not to wake anyone. I wanted to say something, to ask him what he was doing, but something about it felt off. There was something creepy about the way he was moving, like it wasn't really him. Liam kept running for what felt like forever, even though it was probably only a few minutes. Then, out of nowhere, he stopped. He stood still in the middle of the room, staring out the window. I couldn't see his face clearly in the dark, but I could tell he was looking at something outside. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. After a few minutes, Liam slowly turned and walked back to his bed. He lay down without saying a word, like nothing had happened. Soon I could hear him breathing normally again, like he was asleep. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had just seen. The next morning, I asked Liam if he remembered anything strange from the night before. He just gave me a blank look and said he slept fine, but the running didn't stop. It happened again the next night, and the night after that. Each time, Liam would wake up in the middle of the night and start running silently around the room. I tried to stay awake to catch him before he started, but he always seemed to know when I was watching. He would wait until I was almost asleep before starting his strange routine. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat up as soon as he started running and whispered, "Liam, what are you doing?" He stopped in his tracks and looked at me with wide, scared eyes. "I have to keep running," he whispered back. "If I stop, they'll catch me." "Who?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. But Liam didn't answer. He just turned and kept running, his footsteps almost silent on the floor. I stayed up the rest of the night, watching him. The way he moved, the fear in his eyes. It was like he really believed someone was after him. The next day, I went to the dorm advisor and told them what had been happening. They took it seriously and set up a meeting for Liam with a counselor. But that night, when I got back to the dorm, Liam was gone. His side of the room was completely empty, like he had never been there. I never saw Liam again. The dorm advisor said he had been transferred to another room, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something else had happened. The room felt different after he left, cold and empty. I kept thinking about what he said, about the fear in his eyes when he talked about being caught. Who were they, and why was he so scared of them? Was it all in his head, or was something really after him? I didn't know, and I wasn't sure I wanted to find out. Months went by and I tried to forget about it, but every night when I lay down to sleep, I listened for the sound of footsteps. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I thought I could still hear them, soft, quick footsteps running through the empty dorm room. I never told anyone else about it. It felt too strange, too unbelievable, but I knew what I saw, and I knew that whatever had been chasing Liam was still out there somewhere. Finding a place to live in the city was tough. Rent was high, and I didn't have a lot of money to spare. So when I found an ad online looking for a roommate to split the rent, I jumped at the chance. The guy, Eric, seemed normal when we first met. He was quiet and kept to himself, which was fine with me. We moved in together, and for the first couple of weeks, everything seemed okay. But as time passed, Eric started acting strange. It was little things at first. He'd stay up late, pacing around the apartment or watching TV with the volume barely on. Sometimes he'd leave the kitchen messy or forget to lock the front door. I figured he was just stressed out or tired, so I didn't think much of it. But then things got really weird. One night I woke up around 2 a.m. I could hear someone moving around in my room. My heart started pounding as I realized there was a shadowy figure standing at the foot of my bed. As my eyes adjusted to the dark, I saw it was Eric, just standing there, staring at me, and he was holding a knife. My blood ran cold. I was too scared to move, too scared to even breathe. Eric just stood there, staring at me with wide, unblinking eyes. He didn't say anything, didn't do anything. He just stared. Then, slowly, he took a step closer. I was frozen with fear, my mind racing, trying to figure out what to do. Eric took another step toward me, his face calm, almost like he was enjoying seeing me so scared. The knife in his hand glinted in the dim light, and I couldn't take my eyes off it. It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. He took another step closer, and I knew I had to do something, or I might not make it out alive. Without thinking, I threw myself off the bed and shoved Eric as hard as I could. He stumbled back, surprised, and I ran for the door. I didn't stop to look back. I just ran out of the apartment and into the night, not caring where I was going. I didn't stop running until I reached a 24-hour convenience store. I stumbled inside, gasping for breath, and the cashier gave me a weird look. I must have looked crazy. I tried to tell the cashier what happened, but I was so freaked out I could barely get the words out. They called the police, and soon enough a patrol car showed up. The police went back to the apartment with me, but when we got there, Eric was gone. The only thing left was the knife he had been holding, lying on my bed. The cops searched the apartment and found a bunch of creepy stuff hidden in Eric's closet. Photos of people who had gone missing, along with newspaper clippings about unsolved murders. It turned out Eric wasn't just some weird guy, he was a full-on psycho. The police told me he was probably a serial killer, hiding out in the city under different names. The fact that I had been living with him, sharing an apartment, was something I couldn't wrap my head around. I moved out the next day, leaving everything behind. I never heard from Eric again. The police put out a warrant for his arrest, but he vanished without a trace. I still think about that night, about how close I came to not making it out. I haven't had a roommate since. The thought of it still freaks me out, and I can't help but wonder what would have happened if I hadn't woken up when I did.